whatever he's preparing you for, or whoever he's preparing you for, you have to be prepared up to a certain level in order to steward it. Not this idea of perfection or anything like that, but God has to bring you up to a certain level in order so that you have the sustenance inwardly and the capacity and capability to sustain it. Otherwise, we'll wreck it, you know?
Welcome to the Hello Joy podcast. I'm your host, Corel Pinder. Hello Joy is more than a book. It's more than a book launch. It's a movement, but we want you to join us in this move of God that happens on November 15th at Bahamas Harvest. On that evening, you'll get to experience Ezekiel from We Need to Talk, Brenda from One LA, Harrison, the relationship therapist and coach, social media maven Ianthea, and yours truly, Corel Pinder, author of Hello Joy. So we would love for you to join us on November 15th. So welcome to episode 2, where we are going to discuss chapter 2, Seeds of Rejection. And joining us today is Pastor John Sullivan. All right, everyone, we are here with Pastor John. So before we dive into this episode and the chapter that you had the chance to read, I want you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Pastor Jonathan Sullivan. I'm the youth pastor at Legacy Church, so I have that opportunity to serve and work with the youth in our nation, in our church. And I'm excited about the youth. It's one of my passions. If I could tell you a little bit about myself, what my hobbies are, I love to read, so I'm an avid reader. I'm a big podcast guy. I love podcasts, and I love the best of it to the worst of it. Joe Rogan to whoever else, you know. So I enjoy podcasts, and I also enjoy nature. I like things that are natural and that accentuate a natural theme. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm married. November 17th will make 2 years. I'm married to the beautiful Lexus Johnson Sullivan, who is also my boss. So it runs my life for sure. But we're having a great time, and we're expecting. So that's a new adventure in itself as well. So we're having fun.
That's good. It's a good season for you. Yes.
I'm busy.
You're busy. And the Lord is doing a lot in your life. So congratulations on the little one on the way. We're excited for you guys, for you and your wife. New adventure. That's good. And we have a lot of things in common. You said you love nature, you like reading. So I'm glad. I didn't even know that when I chose you. I was just praying, like, I wanted some men to have during this series of Hello Joy, because the books I've done before, they've all been a little more female based. Okay. And so this book is the first time where it's unisex for sure. Men and women can appreciate it. Even when you Black Boy Joy, when you hear about that. Yeah. But, I think it's great. And so I want to dive a little bit into the book, because as our guest, you've had the opportunity to read one chapter from the book, hopefully getting you excited to read the rest and wanting to be inside the rest.
No doubt.
Okay, great. So when you read chapter 2, tell me a little bit about how you felt about the chapter. And was there something or a moment, a line, something that hit you? And why is that moment like so great for you from the book?
Yeah. Okay. So, chapter 2 is amazing. You did an amazing job. I mean, it's amazing. It really forced me to unpack a lot of what we see now, rising up from beyond the surface level. And it forced me to really take a deeper, more narrow look at how rejection has not only impacted me, but impacted the persons that are around me, who I'm engaging with on a day-to-day basis, whether those be familiar relationships or friendships, my wife being married now, and seeing how all of that becomes integrated with the way that I function as a husband, a father, a brother, a son, a pastor, all of these things. Our rejection plays a major role in how we deal and engage with rejection and the spirit of rejection in a real way. And to me, it was absolutely profound. And like you said, that I don't know if you saw that, I got really excited when you said it's unisex. There's a unisex kind of feel to it, because I was able to not only find agreeable and not only find profound, but I was able to draw from and elicit from at such a deep level a lot of what you said. And every turn, what I really loved, at every turn there were real life examples that you ingrained within the book.
What was one of the examples that you felt stayed with you?
You gave this example. You told this story about when you were a kid, and in one sense, it really was about rejection and betrayal, where you and your friend at school, but you and some friends, you all had made a decision to wear.
We did. We had made a decision. So for those, we'll give you a little preview of the book. So in chapter 2, I talk about friendship rejection a lot. And in the friendship rejection, I talk about how we had made this agreement that we were all going to wear the same shirt.
Yeah.
And I didn't even want to do it, but I was like, all right, the 3 of us will wear the same shirt. But all of us had gone away and bought 2 shirts alike. And so one of them was like, oh, I thought we were wearing this shirt. So she's not dressed like us. So now it's only 2 of us. So
Right.
3 looks planned, 2 looks like the Bopsy twins.
Yeah.
And so
That's the phrase.
that's what I said, the Bopsy twins. And so I have that experience where we go into the class and the people are saying, oh, you lotioning out. As we used to say back in the day, lotioning.
Right.
You lotioning out. I said that to my friend, and instead of my friend saying, no, we planned it, she said, she lotioning me.
That's what really caught me. When you said that, when you said you wondered why she didn't respond. No, we planned it. That's simple enough, and it's honest. It's the truth, right? Why does it have to be it?
Why does it have to be a thing?
I really considered that maybe she felt rejected by them, and in turn, of course, that ricocheted, her rejection ricocheted on you, and yeah.
And that's the thing. And that's the
amazing.
thing too about life. And as they go more into chapters of the book, because you only got to read chapter 2, but as we go through different chapters of the book, one of the things that people will see as well is there's so many times where we play victim and the person is villain. So at that age, all I saw was victim. You should have said we was villain. You're the villain. But as you said just now, with rejection, receiving that, she felt some form of rejection and she just went in survival mode. So many times we go into survival mode because we don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah, and I've done that a lot. In my life, I've always kind of been somewhat of an oddity, and socially, my father's a pastor. We grew up in ministry and so on and so forth. And I saw that you referenced that as well. I didn't know that about you. It's amazing, by the way. And but we lived in a community where we were exposed to certain aspects of the environment, of an urban environment, and a lot of the intricacies and the idiosyncrasies of what we may stereotypically identify in an urban environment. And I had to deal with all of that. I had to deal with the getting dropped off to school in the church bus and squealing the wall, for being called Bible boy, and then trying to overcompensate with what I saw in the community, trying to mirror that with my peers, but still feeling uncomfortable because I knew that that wasn't me. And I had to deal with that from a young age into my teenage years, and still knowing that I was called for greater, called to greater heights, how to call upon my life that was undeniable.
So as a pastor's kid, like you said, people called you name, people said certain things about you. And so when you went into survival mode, when you said I overcompensated, what was the response? Did you go into being an overachiever? Did you withdraw? Did you become a people pleaser? What was the survival response?
When you said in the book, that really got me going too. Yeah. It's amazing. If I could list, I guess, the more domineering traits or disqualities, if I can call it that, among them, I would say that I really went into people-pleasing tendencies, definitely. And even now today, I still have to be cognizant of the way that rejection not only shows up in my life, but how by default, I begin to externalize people-pleasing tendencies.
Yeah.
Whether that's in ministry, whether that's at work, even being a husband, all of it, being a student, all of it.
I had someone say to me, a leader, they were telling me that the Lord corrected them because they love their wife so much. And so they would always just say, yes, okay, that's what we'll do. They'd be very agreeable with their wife, and they're thinking, like, it doesn't seem bad what she wants or what she's asking for. And he said that the Lord had to correct him and say, you are her covering. You are her protector.
Yes.
So I know that you love her, but sometimes loving her means that you're not going to do it that way, or you're not going to do it in that timing, or it's going to look a little different, because you should always consult me. But he was just like, he loves his wife so much. He just wants to make sure she's good. And so, like you said, you can slip into it, because people pleasing is the fact that people are givers. So they're like, I'm a giver. I say yes, or I make sure I'm accommodating everyone. But if you're accommodating and that's not what the Holy Spirit told you to do, then it's out of alignment.
Yeah, definitely. It's very dangerous too. It doesn't seem, I think that for a lot of those disqualities or those traits, they have more of an apparent negative undertone to them. But becoming a people pleaser, it doesn't necessarily seem so, so melodramatic, so like over the top, or so people aren't able to associate with you. Because a lot of people that struggle with that, people are drawn to them as well. And in the same manner, just like yourself, like you referenced in the book, people were drawn to you. You have this big energy, this energy is bigger than life, and people are attracted to it. And it's kind of like the same thing with me growing up. I'm just sanguine, always happy-go-lucky, and that's kind of like my personality, sanguine, phlegmatic, that kind of between there. And that's how it developed. But because of my relationship with my dad, especially as I grew into my teenage years, I wasn't able to reconcile a lot of what I saw practice in the home, and then what I saw externalized out in life and ministry, and all of that. And if I think what would have made the difference is without me having to learn on my own, or God teaching me through experience the long way around. If my dad, for example, had sat me down and say, son, this is how life is. This is how I had to go through life. This is what happened to me when I was your age, and so on and so forth. And here's how I'm trying to stop it from manifesting in your life. Here's how I'm trying to stop bleeding on you. And all credit to my dad. I always tell him that he's a great man. If I could be half the guy he is, I'll be in good shape.
Yes.
But I do see this need of not bleeding out rejection onto your children, and yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons I talk about why I wrote the book, is because that level of self-awareness and accountability and vulnerability is not there. And I think it's just because people don't realize, because what happens is you go through rejection as a child, you start doing these survival or protective things in order to flow through life. And then you just tell people like, that's just how I am. I'm just a hard worker, or I'm just a giver. No, you're a people pleaser. I'm just a hard worker. No, you're a workaholic, because you're hiding from pain. But you don't want to address those issues because it's painful. So what your brain does is it tries to make sure that I don't ever experience pain anymore. Instead of us being vulnerable and going to God to express that pain, we just overcompensate and we try to make it work. So in this book, we talk a lot about, and this is one of the reasons I wrote the book, as a believer. I've been a believer for years. I grew up as a believer, had some years in and out of the faith.
Yeah, I did
but
too.
But in the last few years, being very diligent about, going to worship and leading ministry, but still not really feeling the joy. And that is because the vulnerability was missing. And so you could be feeding your spirit, but not feeding your soul. So when you think about that and think about how we feed our spirit and how we nurture the soul, what do you think we need to do differently? Because we go into church every Sunday, we read in the Bible, but sometimes our soul is still neglected. So what do you think we need to do to nourish and garden our soul? How do we still feed our spirit, grow in the spirit, but not neglect the soul?
For me, here's what I've learned in life. I've learned to give myself what I need. I've learned to, and what I mean by that is sometimes the way that the body works, you can provide all of the nutrients that the body needs, and it may be lacking in one or two that have a devastating effect. You may be lacking zinc or vitamin D or whatever, And that causes the body to completely, ultimately become dysfunctional. And the same way that it is in the physical, so it is in the spirit. Give it what it needs. So if your soul is in need of intimacy, you feed your soul things that are foundationally direct you towards cultivating an intimate relationship with Jesus and understanding that in a deep way, not just in word only. And I think that was the trouble with me, because I'm a word guy, and I love to read and that kind of stuff, right? So it's easy for me to just crack open a book and get to reading, or look up some article and get deep in that.
Deeper.
Yeah. And that may not necessarily be what I need. And, but doing the deep work, like you were alluding to just a moment ago, doing the deep work, that's uncovering the pain that lies deep within. That's hard. That's hard work. And that's soul work. Mm-hmm. That's really soul work. Jesus in the Gospels speak to that. He speaks to identifying the problems that really lie within. And here's one thing that comes to mind that he said. He said, it's not really what goes into a person that defiles them, meaning that contaminates the seed and the nature of who they are, so that you can now interpret them to be something that they manifest outwardly. It's not really what goes in, because we have very limited control over what exists in the environment around us. And we're constantly taking things in. We're literally antennas. So it's not necessarily that. We have to trust Holy Spirit to block off a lot of the things on the outside, but it's what you allow to fester on the inside. And this is important, in my opinion. This is important because when you're a kid, you're not really responsible. You don't know that my dad shouting at me is at 40 years old going to cause me to internalize my life or my place in life in a certain way. You don't necessarily know that. So you don't really have a responsibility on that part. But as soon as you become aware of it, you bear that responsibility of doing the deep work. And we have so many adults, saved, unsaved, Christians, non-Christians, whatever, right, that are running from emotional healing, which I hope I could plug in here, of course, can only really be found in Christ, in a relationship with Christ. But we have so many adults that are running away from emotional healing and emotional wellness and spiritual wellness because they're afraid of going deep and uncovering that stuff, the soul work, heart work.
Yeah, that's so good, because you can't control what comes in and you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it.
Yes.
And so this is a generation where they're big on therapy, but we have parents and, boomers who are like, what are you talking about therapy? I'm not doing any therapy. But these things are festering. You're not dealing with the emotional pain that's going on there. And you may have experienced rejection as a child, but if you don't deal with that pain, then you're not doing the soul work. As you said, the soul work is, I got to deal with the pain. I got to confront the pain. I got to confront that with the Lord. I have to actually have a conversation with it and have the hard conversations with people so that that's not continuing to build. Because like you said, I can't control if you said something that made me feel rejected. But what I can do is take that back to the Lord and work through that. So 100%. one of the things that I wanted to also know from you is that when you're dealing with rejection, how do you discern, like, is this rejection or am I being redirected by the Lord? Especially if you've dealt with rejection before, like you dealt with rejection growing up, the way that people talk to you. So how now do you frame it? Or is it still a tug of war of when you deal with stuff of processing, is this rejection? Is this God's? How do you deal with that? And how do you also guard yourself that you're not developing an idol out of something? Because I think that's when we feel rejection even more, when we want something so bad and we don't see it.
Yeah.
As your dedicated event planner, I'm the visionary behind curating something just for you. I can't wait to turn your dream into reality and create a magical experience that will leave your guests in awe. I specialize in creating experiences that go beyond the ordinary event. Together, let's tell a captivating story and turn moments into memories that last a lifetime. Let's embark on this journey together and create an experience that expresses your vision, your passion, and your personality. Hi, I'm Davina Rutherford, lead event planner of MYB Bahamas. Let's make magic together.
Developing unhealthy connections I struggled with that because I'm an idealist, right? So I think in big terms, just generally across the board, if I'm seeing something for myself, I'm seeing myself as this, and I'm not necessarily, I haven't necessarily planned or seen or prepared myself even for the difficult things which may include rejection along the way to becoming what I see for myself. And that's a big part of it. But I love the word that you use, to get back to your question, I love the word that you use, discernment. And one of the things that we see that is lacking in the body of Christ today is discernment. What's so powerful, and to me, the profundity of it is found in the fact that as a Christian, as a believer, your spiritual life cannot survive without discernment. The Holy Spirit is the source of discernment in our lives. And discernment, by the Holy Spirit being the source of discernment in our lives, the Holy Spirit is the one that allows us to pick up on certain things, certain cues, certain reactions, certain responses, or certain behaviors that are retroactive, that are connected to things that subconsciously we're not aware of, right? And so I like how you frame that question, because there is a reframing that needs to happen, and it hinges on each of our ability to be discerning and to be aware and sober. And that's one of my favorite words. And for me personally, a lot of my freedom has come from, a lot of my inner freedom, my personal freedom, and my healing has come from the Lord teaching me how to be a sober person, how to be sober in life, and that's crazy, because I just told you I'm an idealist. Yeah,
So how do you do the both? How do you dream big but be sober about it? How do you dream big but you're still sober?
I focus on what I try to do. Let me say it this way. What I try to do is I try to focus on the small parts of my life, taking the small parts of my life in stages.
That's good.
In the Psalms, it says this, that your word is a light unto my feet, a lamp unto my feet, and a light to my path. A path, we can imagine is, it can be winding, it can be curvatured, it can be, it can be straight, it can be anything, right? And that's how we can imagine a path to be. But if we take by meaning that his word is a lamp for our feet, if you're needing his word to be the lamp for your feet, that means that it's really only giving you enough light for the next step, especially if you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death. If you're caught up in a season like that, it's kind of what I'm trying to say. So what I'm saying is that focusing on the more smaller, intricate parts of your life, being sober enough and aware enough to understand, hey, why am I thinking like that? Catching yourself in those moments. Why am I telling myself that? Why do I feel this way based on this person's response? Or why am I allowing this to agitate me? So on and so forth. Why all of a sudden do I feel, distracted, for example? That's, for me, that was a personal thing that I had to uncover. The Lord had to teach me why I seek distraction, and as an automatic default behavior, and it's because of a fear of really being focused and seeing stuff following through, and that stemmed from a fear of failure because of my strange relationship with my father growing up. So all of that he had to teach me. He had to
show you that you didn't want to follow through. And one of the things you mentioned that I want to circle back with is you were saying being sober was so important. And when you're sober, you can take it step by step. And I want to share something transparently that the Lord revealed to me just this morning about taking things step by step. So when it comes to my business, there's some ideas, some big, like you said, idealists. They're big ideas that the Lord gave me. And earlier this summer, and one of them was birthing Hello Joy, I was asking the Lord, how do I fulfill these and do my day-to-day work? So he had me set up this spreadsheet, and there's an Excel sheet page for each of the big dreams that I'm doing right now. Okay. And basically I write out different things that need to be done according to this. And every day I just do one thing from the list. One thing from the list. And so with that, it gives me the encouragement that I'm getting closer and closer. Yes. And as we can see, we're birthing Hello Joy right now. Yes. But that's from months of just doing one thing every day. It. And so one of the things that the Lord revealed to me, because I've said to someone before, I said this on a panel before, when someone says, how do I know when I hear God? How do I know if it's me or if it's God? And I said, most times if something has been an idol in my life, there is room for me to talk, my flesh to come up and talk versus hearing God. When something's not an idol, whatever God says with it, I can do, I can move. I know it's him for sure because I don't care if it happens or not. Yeah. But when it's an idol or something that has been an idol, so my love life, wanting to be married, wanting to have children, that's an area that sometimes, was that me or was that Jesus? Because I really wanted it really bad. Yeah. So one of the things that the Lord told me was the same way that there are things, and it may look different than business. Business is kind of straightforward of the steps you need to take. When it comes to preparing for that season of my life, it may just mean that I just want you to do intimacy with me every day. Yeah. And did you do that every day? It may be that I just want you to pray over your home as you walk through the home. It may be that I wanted you to wash dishes. It could be practical, but it could also just be the intimate healing part that he wants me to do in that season. And I think when I focus on that, you're less anxious about the thing. You're less because what I say is with business, I applied to do a pitch competition recently. And I was a little sour when I wasn't chosen, but I'm still every day working towards the business plan, even though I didn't get it. So I say that to say so if something's an idol or you're not really staying sober and focused and just doing the day-to-day of what the Lord is telling me to do today, rejection can throw you off.
Exactly.
Because you're not sober and you're not just doing, Lord is a lamp on my feet. Yeah. This is just redirection. This just means this is moving forward. Yeah. So I think it's important for us to, like you said, go to God daily and get, what do you want me to do today regards to this? And be sober about it. Because if not, anytime something throws us off, we're just going to want to give up.
Yeah. Sobriety breeds discipline. And that's important because the culmination of my life story is that I maintain my freedom today because I'm committed to being a sober disciple. I'm committed to being disciplined no matter how it looks. I'm not saying that I respond correctly to the discipline of the Lord, because we internalize discipline to be harsh sometimes, but there will be some times that God has to take you on an extended season, because whatever he's preparing you for, or whoever he's preparing you for, you have to be prepared up to a certain level in order to steward it. Not this idea of perfection or anything like that, but God has to bring you up to a certain level in order so that you have the sustenance inwardly and the capacity and capability to sustain it. Otherwise, we'll wreck it. Rejection really one of the things that I developed as a kid growing up. I also began to develop this thing of self-sabotage. Like I would automatically run to disqualify myself from, and I mentioned a few minutes ago, fear of failure. I would automatically run to disqualify myself from doing something with the big dreams, still with the big dreams, still with the big ideas, still seeing myself in a certain light, and being compelled to see myself in a certain light inescapably. But always running to the nearest excuse to disqualify myself. And so what helps me, I say that to reinforce the idea that what helps me to maintain, to progress that. I love how you use that over time, within 2 months, being able to look back and say, within 2 months, here's how I progressed in all of my plans at each of these various areas, whether it be the pitch, whether it be whatever it is. It's all coming to life now. But if you're not disciplined, if you're not sober enough to commit to those small, what may seem menial tasks at any given time, you'll never see that. And that's how it is. So, yeah.
That's good. So this is my final question for you as we close this episode. When I think about male friendships and male vulnerability, women, we have these conversations all the time. And like I said, Hello Joy is a book for women and men. But we notice that sometimes men only find vulnerability in a safe place with women. Sometimes they don't find it in circles with just men. So how do you navigate, or what does healthy, honest, vulnerable friendship look like with men, especially when you have to deal with rejection in some of those scenarios?
I think a great example, like I told you, I'm a podcast guy, right? So there's a former football player, Cam Newton, has a podcast. And recently, more virally, one of the clips of his podcast went on. I think he was talking to he's a renowned, men's teacher. I think he's a martial arts or jiu-jitsu teacher, but he's a believer. Jason.
Yes, Jason. I was listening to the other day. He was on Mel Robbins. He's doing the rounds because I think he has a book. Yeah, he does martial arts. Yep.
He did something that I thought that reminded, it just came to my mind as you were speaking. Because what the fruit of accountability is not necessarily that that I listen or hearken to the advice or the word to the person that I'm being accountable to. The fruit of accountability is that it produces a level of sobriety in me that I'm not afraid to be confronted with what I'm facing. That standing at that precipice of deciding whether to jump off the ledge into a decision or demonstrate some restraint. Now it's not the time, that kind of thing. Double thinking and then rethinking and going off of that, because I have someone at my back telling me, hey, buddy, if you do this, so on and so forth. That's the fruit of accountability. And for men, I don't really know how it shows. Well, I have some idea of how it shows up with women pastoring girls and pastoring young ladies and stuff like that. I kind of have some idea how it shows up, or what it looks like. But I know that with men, there has to be, it's not so much forceful, but it's direct confrontation, and not rude, not mean or anything like that, but plain. It's the plain truth that's given. Okay, help me to understand what's going on with you. All right, now tell me, you really think that will work? You're gonna run yourself into a head-on collision with that if you do that. So it's gotta be that kind of rhetoric, that kind of attitude layered with that kind of, that I think it's really a fragrance. It's a smooth, communicative directorate, a smooth communicative flow that communicates to the person, okay, I'm taking you seriously because of what you're explaining to me, and here's my honest view of it. Here's what I think. Here's what I think serves you in your, as far as your best interest in this life, and that kind of thing.
And what do you think is the first step for men who they may have that kind of conversation and confrontation with women, but they don't have it with men? Like they just have very surface level conversations with men. Yeah. What do you think is the first step for someone who says, I would do that, but I just don't have that kind of connection with any men in my life? What's the first?
Men are in our culture, but we're seeing it kind of change now. But I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna be just kind of plain about it. But men have historically demonstrated a level of cowardice when it comes to doing the deep work, soul work, and I used to believe because it was promulgated so widely that they don't have anyone to talk to. Men have always had men to talk to. We have 4 gospels that show Jesus teaching his 12 men to be accountable.
That's
one
good.
another,
That's
right?
good. That's good.
So
That's good.
I don't really buy that argument. And what it is, I think, well, there's some things I think it's some of it is rooted in misogyny and and that kind of thing. But if you allow a practice, a societal practice to be so ingrained that over generations it becomes the cultural norm, then it seems it doesn't seem right. Regardless of it being the right thing to do, the right action to take, it doesn't seem right. And it takes a new level of boldness really to be comfortable that, it is right for the sake of the persons who I'm accountable to, for the sake of the persons who I'm charged with protection. I do need to hold myself accountable to somebody, and at the gist of what I'm saying is it's hard work. We have to be brave enough to abandon cowardice, to abandon all abandonment, and make a decision. You know what? I'm gonna place myself in an uncomfortable position, but I'm understanding that there's something larger at work here, and I think that's really where it starts. David had Jonathan, and when I read their relationship in the scriptures, I don't believe that Jonathan necessarily was rude to his father, but he did hold his father accountable for what he was doing against his friend, against David, because it was clearly not right. And I'm not saying that, I'm not using that as an example of usurping authority, but Saul was clearly on a rampage and on a warpath to getting rid of David. And his own son saw what he was doing and he knew it was wrong. He said, what's David done? To the point where Saul enraged, hey, this guy trying to take over your kingdom, It's not, so those kinds of confrontational conversations, just to use a biblical example, are what needs to be had. So
I love that. And I love how you said, this may have been how it was done in the past, but it has to change in order for the culture to change.
Yeah.
And if we're believers, Jesus had 12 disciples.
Yeah.
Paul had Timothy.
Yeah.
David had Jonathan. And so if we're following examples of people who were believers in the Bible, especially Jesus, if Jesus is your example, you cannot be a man and be a believer and say that I cannot find accountability, that I cannot find trust, I cannot find hard work in a community of men.
That's good.
So as we end, I want you to turn to this camera and I want you to talk to a man. You've read chapter 2, not the whole book, but you're ready for the whole book now. And based on what you read on Seeds of Rejection in chapter 2, I want you to tell a young man why they should read this book and come out on November 15th.
Young man, if you're listening to me, if you're under the sound of my voice right now, I'm telling you as a man just like yourself who was scarred by verbal abuse, who was scarred by physical abuse, who was scarred by a sense of abandonment, a fear of failure, all of these things, all stemming from rejection. It's a poison that if you don't find the cure in a relationship with Christ, it's going to seep into every vein that you have. And it's going to bleed and poison those around you, those that you care about. It's infectious and it's an issue that needs to be dealt with. The only way, and I'm telling you this, the only way that you can come into healing, come into wholeness, come into the fullness of your identity is if you deal with rejection. And David said in Psalms chapter 27, that when my mother and my father forsake me, the Lord will take me up. He was able to say that because he found a formula to deal with even when he came into realms and spaces of being abandoned, you know, he knew that God would take him up regardless of what his familial relationships look like. And some of us, we crush under the weight of being abandoned and being rejected. If that's you, you need to come out on November 15th and you need to get a copy of this book. Hello, Joy.
I love it. Well, Pastor John, it's been an amazing conversation. I want to say thank you so much. I know your schedule's super busy, so thank you for having this conversation with us.
I really appreciate it. I told you it's my honor, and I really love this. This book is amazing. So
thank you.
I got so excited.
Yeah, I didn't pay him to say that, guys. He just thinks it's amazing.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, Pastor John, good to see you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you for joining us for episode 2 on the seeds of rejection with Pastor John Sullivan. This episode was powered by MYB Event Management. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, then you know the book launch on November 15th is going to be life-changing. So if you would like to join us on November 15th, be sure to check out the QR code on the screen or check out the show notes below for more details.